Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Gerard. I'm a student loan consultant, and I'm very pleased to be working with the American Dental Education Association, ADEA, to provide you with some information designed to help you do a better job of managing your student loans. This very important repayment module is on the income-driven repayment plans and how to determine if these plans should be part of your repayment strategy as you graduate from dental school or a dental hygiene program. Now, a quick reminder, there are other repayment options available under federal plans: standard 10-year, graduated 10-year, and the extended 25-year plans. You have modules that have referenced those plans before. There are actually 4 different types of income-driven repayment plans. We are not going to spend time in this module on income contingent repayment. It is an older plan, and it in almost all cases results in a significantly higher payment compared to the other income-driven repayment plans. So we are going to focus this module on income-based repayment, known as IBR, pay-as-you-earn, known as PAYE, and revise pay-as-you-earn, known as REPAYE. REPAYE was released in December of 2015, and we're actually recording this 1 month later in January of 2016. Now, income-driven repayment plans are designed for borrowers with high debt who simply cannot afford repayment under other plans, most notably the standard 10-year plan. One way to think about these plans is that the bigger the gap between your debt and your income as you start out in practice, whether you're a dental school graduate or a dental hygiene graduate, the bigger the gap between your debt and income, the more likely you are going to need one of these income-driven repayment plans. That's one reason these are so popular, and they're ideal for many dental postdoctoral students or residents at teaching hospitals who have high debt and perhaps a relatively low stipend as an employee of the hospital, but they want to start repayment and cannot afford another repayment plan such as the standard 10-year plan. One of the very important things about income-driven repayment plans to remember is that the monthly payments change on an annual basis. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to using income-driven repayment plans. And once again, IDR is the umbrella name for the different plans we'll talk about: IBR, PAYE, and REPAYE. Clearly an advantage, more manageable payments. If you can't afford repayment under other plans, an IDR might be something to take a look at. And as you'll see in a moment in some of the slides coming up, the use of IDRs may lead to forgiveness, including forgiveness under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The use of an IDR may actually help you build your credit. Now, that's the case with any federal repayment plan because about 35% of your FICO score comes from the timely payment of obligations, including student loans. So the use of an income plan like IBR, PAYE, or REPAYE may actually help you build your credit. There can be disadvantages to the use of income-driven repayment plans. Sometimes if the gap between your debt and income is really large, the payments that you have with an IDR may be so low that they don't even cover the interest initially on your student loans, and that actually causes your balance to go up. Budgeting may also be a challenge because, as we said in the previous slide, the payments change on an annual basis. So there are pros and cons to the use of income-driven repayment plans. Now, this is a side-by-side comparison of income-based repayment, pay-as-you-earn, and revise pay-as-you-earn. First of all, notice that pay-as-you-earn and REPAYE are only good on direct loans. Now, that should not be a problem for most of you because the direct loan program has been the only federal loan program since the 2010-11 academic year. Some of you may have some older loans called FEL loans from private lenders. We're not talking private loans, we're talking federal loans from private lenders that were available many years ago. Those are only eligible to be repaid under income-based repayment. Note also that pay-as-you-earn is only good for new borrowers who started borrowing on October 1, 2007. IBR and REPAYE don't have that what we call trigger date. So IBR and REPAYE really available to anyone, but Pay As You Earn has that trigger date. It's only good for folks who started borrowing as of October 1, 2007. With regard to the payment calculation, IBR is 15% of discretionary income. And note that Pay and REPAYE are 10% of discretionary income. But as we'll mention on one of the upcoming slides, there is no payment cap on REPAYE. With IBR and Pay, you're never required to pay more than the original standard 10-year amount. Notice also with IBR and Pay, you have to meet a threshold called partial financial hardship, but with REPAYE, all incomes qualify. And note finally on this slide, spousal income is counted with IBR and Pay, but only if you file a joint tax return. With revised Pay As You Earn, spousal income is always counted in the calculation, regardless of filing status for married borrowers. Now this is part 2 of our IDR comparison chart for income-based repayment, Pay As You Earn, and revised Pay As You Earn. The repayment term under IBR is 25 years. With Pay, it's 20. But note with REPAYE, it's 25 years if you have any graduate school loans, and certainly that's the case for dental school graduates. However, it's only 20 years if all your borrowing was in an undergraduate program. So those of you who are dental hygiene students who are listening to this, if all your borrowing is for a certificate program or an undergrad program, under REPAYE the term is only 20 years. Payments under IBR are eligible payments for public service loan forgiveness as long as they're made on direct loans. And of course, with Pay and REPAYE, those programs are only good for direct loans. And so payments will count under Pay As You Earn and REPAYE, once again, as long as you meet the other eligibility requirements for public service loan forgiveness. A reminder, there is a separate module from ADEA on the public service loan forgiveness program. There's no limit to capitalization with IBR, and there's no limit to capitalization with REPAYE, but with Pay, there is a limit of 10% of the original principal balance. That's one reason you'll find that Pay is likely the better program of these three. In terms of interest subsidy, with IBR and Pay, there is an interest subsidy for the first 3 years on subsidized loans, simply meaning if the amount of interest that's accrued on your subsidized loans for the first 3 years is more than the actual payment calculation, the government will pick up the difference. In other words, they will not let you go in the hole anymore for the first 3 years under IBR and Pay on your subsidized loans. That's also the case with REPAYE, but with REPAYE, there's also an interest subsidy on subsidized loans. It works the same way, but it's 50% of the difference between the interest calculated on unsub loans and what your actual monthly payment calculation is. So there's a nice protection with an interest subsidy on REPAYE. The AAMC ADEA Dental Loan Organizer and Calculator should have that calculation ready sometime later this spring. Now, some comments on the revised Pay As You Earn plan. You may have some specific questions about this new repayment plan that was released in December 2015. It is open to all borrowers on their direct loans. You saw this on the previous slides, regardless of income level and regardless of when someone first started borrowing. However, unlike IBR and Pay, the payments are always capped at 10% of discretionary income. There is no payment cap. Remember that with IBR and Pay, there is a wonderful protection that says when you go back to renew eligibility, if your income has gotten so high that you no longer qualify for the lower payments under IBR or Pay, your monthly payment automatically reverts to or maxes out at the original standard 10-year amount. You can overpay if you want to, but the great protection with IBR and Pay is that you never will be billed for more than the original standard 10-year amount. There is no payment cap. With REPAYE, it's always 10% of discretionary income. Very important for you to know that. The repayment term on REPAYE is 25 years if you have any graduate school loans, and certainly as a dental school graduate, you do. Now, if you're a dental hygiene graduate and you only have loans for a certificate or undergrad program, the repayment term is 20 years. Spousal income is always counted in the calculation of payment amount regardless of how you file your taxes. So if you're married filing separately, spousal income will be asked for and will be counted in the calculation of payments under REPAYE. And finally, unlike IBR and PAYE, there is a partial interest subsidy on unsubsidized loans with REPAYE. That is brand new. We anticipate the AAMC ADEA dental loan organizer and calculator having that calculation sometime this spring. So some very important information on REPAYE. Now, in general, we think if you look closely at IBR Pay and revised Pay As You Earn, you'll agree that Pay As You Earn, or PAYE, is the best of the three income-driven repayment plans that we've talked about. Number one, lower payments, 10% of discretionary income, with the protection of the payment being capped at the original standard 10-year amount. So lower payments with PAYE. A shorter repayment period. Remember, IBR is 25 years and REPAYE is 25 years if you have any graduate school loans. So lower payments and a shorter repayment period, 20 years with PAYE. And unlike IBR, which has no limit, and unlike REPAYE, which has no limit, Pay As You Earn has a limit on capitalization, how much accrued and unpaid interest can be added back to the original principal amount you borrowed, and it's a 10% limit. Very, very important. So once again, with PAYE, lower payments, a shorter repayment period, and a limit on capitalization. That's why we think you'll agree that Pay As You Earn for most borrowers is the best of the income-driven repayment plans. Now, there are forgiveness provisions associated with income-driven repayment plans, and we are not talking here about public service loan forgiveness. There is a separate module on public service loan forgiveness. So listen carefully to the forgiveness provisions under these programs. With Pay As You Earn, remember the repayment term is 20 years. So if you use Pay As You Earn and you have not caught up, in other words, you still have a balance after 20 years, the balance will be forgiven by the federal government regardless of where you're working. It has nothing to do with type employment, but the balance will be subject to tax under current tax law. With IBR and REPAYE, the forgiveness provision works exactly the same, except that the repayment term on IBR is 25 years. And remember, for anyone who has graduate loans, the repayment term on REPAYE is 25 years. So once again, if you're in IBR or REPAYE and you still have a balance after 25 years, the debt is forgiven. And same thing, it's not dependent on the type of employment you have, and the balance that's forgiven will be subject to tax under current tax law. So those are the forgiveness provisions associated with the income-driven repayment plans. Now, here is an estimate of the forgiveness amounts for a dental school graduate at the average level of debt for indebted graduates in the class of 2015. This is for someone at about $255,000 in debt going directly into practice with a family size of one. Notice there's no forgiveness under income-based repayment. This simply means that this borrower would catch up and have the debt paid in full before the 25-year term for IBR is up. But with Pay As You Earn, remember the payments are smaller, and remember that the repayment term is only 20 years. And so notice the potential forgiveness amount for this borrower with Pay As You Earn. But once again, remember, under current tax law, that amount would be subject to income tax. We encourage you to run your own forgiveness estimates with the AAMC ADEA Dental Loan Organizer and Calculator. This is the exact same borrower who does a one-year general practice residency making a stipend of about $52,000. Notice once again, no forgiveness under IBR. This borrower, even with the lower payments that 1 year in their residency program, still gets their balance paid off before the 25-year term in IBR. But notice the forgiveness amount is actually higher now with pay as you earn, because over the 20-year term, that first year of payment was very low because their payments were being made when their salary was low as a resident. Once again, we encourage you to put your own numbers in the AMC ADEA dental loan organizer and calculator. Some takeaways from this module. We certainly hope you've found this information helpful. Income-driven repayment plans really provide responsible borrowers who have high debt and a gap between their debt and their income, an effective way to responsibly repay their student loans. We would encourage you to consider other more aggressive plans first, and in some ways back into the use of an income-driven repayment plan. In other words, don't assume that just because your debt is high, you'll need an income-driven repayment plan, but they are there for you if you need them. That's what they were designed to do, to help borrowers with a gap between debt and income. There's no penalty for overpayment on any federal loan program, including income-driven repayment plans. There are many of your colleagues who are using IDRs because they can't afford another plan, but they're overpaying to try and take control of their debt and pay it off as quickly as possible, perhaps avoiding the tax penalty if they hit the 25 or 20-year term and had the debt forgiven under either IBR, pay, or repay. We encourage you to work carefully with your loan servicer when you're applying for income-driven repayment plans. They will likely have a link to studentloans.gov because you can find the application electronically on that website. There are a number of resources to help. We have referenced these already. The AMC ADEA Dental Loan Organizer and Calculator, where you can put in your own portfolio. You can actually upload it from the NSLDS site, the National Student Loan Data System site, and run your own repayment and forgiveness estimates based on your own portfolio and your career plans. It's at amc.org/godental. And of course, studentloans.gov has a repayment estimator that will help provide you with estimates of eligibility under all repayment plans, including the income-driven repayment plans. We hope the information in this module has been helpful to you as you determine whether or not an income-driven repayment plan should be part of your repayment strategy as a dental school graduate or a dental hygiene graduate.